Welcome back to the Dinar Daily, everyone. And before we dive into the heart of today's significant market update, let me present a scenario that you absolutely do not want to overlook. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that a currency, which was barely a whisper in financial conversations just 5 years ago, has suddenly transformed into one of the most hotly debated topics in foreign exchange communities across the globe. Picture millions of traders simultaneously asking the same questions, analyzing the same charts, and wondering why the Vietnam dong is suddenly appearing everywhere. It is fascinating to consider how this kind of unexpected and organic attention can influence broader market movements, investor psychology, and the global conversations that surround emerging currencies, including the discussions that are so prevalent right here in the Iraqi dinar community. This is precisely the unique situation we are exploring today, as we unpack the surge of interest that has taken the financial internet by storm. Investors gathering on platforms like Reddit, Telegram, Forex Factory, and even within the quieter, private groups on WhatsApp are currently buzzing with intense speculation, detailed analysis, and probing questions about why this specific currency has stepped so boldly into the spotlight. In today's broadcast, we are going to break everything down using simple, crystal clear language so that even if you are relatively new to the world of Forex, you will understand exactly why people are watching the Vietnam dong with such unprecedented interest. It is vital that you stay with me until the very end of this discussion, because what is unfolding right now could fundamentally reshape how small investors interpret currency momentum and identify early-stage market signals as we move further into 2025 and beyond. Let us begin by establishing a foundational understanding of why the Vietnam dong has suddenly evolved into such a heated topic in the online space. For many years, this currency was known primarily within very niche financial circles or among long-term speculators who held a belief that Vietnam's specific brand of economic growth could eventually create significant upward pressure on its currency's value. However, what has changed recently is not just the underlying economy, but the visibility of that economy. In the landscape of 2025, Forex communities have become far more synchronized and reactive than they ever were in previous years. Investors today no longer rely exclusively on slow-moving traditional news cycles. Instead, they react almost instantly to chart movements, shifts in sentiment, and evolving global financial discussions. Because of this hyper-connected environment, when a currency demonstrates even a minor uptick in attention or a slight increase in trading volume, the word spreads with incredible speed. This is exactly what has transpired with the Vietnam dong. Traders began to notice increased conversations, slightly higher demand in specific niche markets, and a growing volume of discussion regarding Vietnam's ongoing economic reforms. These initially small signals snowballed into much larger conversations, and before long, the name of the currency started appearing frequently in live streams, discussion forums, podcasts, and YouTube analysis channels. This does not automatically imply that a major revaluation is imminent, but it does signify that the currency has entered a spotlight of scrutiny that it simply was not in before. One of the primary reasons the dong is attracting such magnetic attention is that investors are increasingly keeping a close watch on currencies tied to fast-growing economies. Vietnam has been aggressively expanding its manufacturing sector, attracting high-profile international partnerships, and taking steps to improve its overall economic stability. When a developing country strengthens its economic structure in this manner, even modest improvements can catch the discerning eye of Forex enthusiasts. What is especially interesting to observe is how online communities tend to amplify these signals. A single chart shared in a group chat, one speculative post on social media, or a small wave of buyers entering the market can lead to a widespread perception of momentum. Momentum, whether it is based on concrete reality or merely perceived through social lenses, drives discussion and engagement. Forex communities thrive on the possibility of early positioning, and that idea alone sparks immense curiosity. People naturally want to know whether something significant is forming behind the scenes, even if the current evidence is not yet dramatic. This curiosity becomes the fuel for further discussion, more videos, and new predictions, which only serves to increase the attention placed on the dong. This is why individuals who watch currencies like the Iraqi dinar are paying such close attention. When one currency gains online traction, it often inspires comparisons, strategy discussions, and fresh speculation across the entire spectrum of emerging currencies. Another factor that is well worth exploring is the evolving psychology of Forex communities in this modern era. In 2025, the internet has facilitated an environment where traders are not just watching charts, they are watching each other. When one group of investors shows excitement or interest, others feel compelled to investigate the cause. When rumors begin to circulate, people race to either verify or debunk them. When a currency begins trending in discussion channels, many investors feel an obligation to analyze it, even if they had never considered it as an option before. The Vietnam dong has become a perfect case study of this socially driven momentum. The currency did not skyrocket instantly, nor did it revalue overnight, but the community engagement shifted drastically. What actually happened is that online communities noticed small but consistent streams of conversation regarding Vietnam's economic progress and its increasing relevance in global trade. This perception created a wave of questions. Is something happening behind the scenes? Are major institutions positioning themselves early? Is 2025 the year emerging Asian currencies gain more market dominance? These questions alone were sufficient to spark the viral interest we are seeing today. This rise in curiosity does not just affect Vietnam. It influences broader market sentiment, especially among investors who follow currencies like the Iraqi dinar and want to understand the global patterns that could eventually impact their own holdings. The next major element driving the sudden attention toward the Vietnam dong is how investors in 2025 are evaluating long-term potential rather than chasing short-term volatility. Many traders have grown frustrated with the limited movement and saturation of traditional major currencies and are turning their attention toward emerging markets where early positioning can sometimes provide stronger long-term opportunities. The dong fits that category perfectly, not because it is exploding in value right this second, but because it shows signs of a stable foundation that could support future growth. Online analysts often point out that Vietnam has continued to strengthen trade relationships with major global partners, especially as multinational companies search for alternatives to more expensive manufacturing hubs. As these international partnerships deepen, investors start to wonder whether the country's currency might eventually experience gradual upward pressure as a result of increased demand. This speculation encourages people to study the dong more closely, ask detailed questions, and seek out potential catalysts for change. What makes this particularly interesting is not a sudden price movement, but the awareness that consistent economic activity can sometimes foreshadow long-term shifts. Since Forex communities thrive on anticipation, this growing interest creates a ripple effect where more people begin discussing, researching, and monitoring the dong's behavior on a daily basis. Another critically important reason for the burst of conversation is the way forward. Thinking influencers and financial commentators react to rising search trends. When content creators notice that a certain currency is suddenly being typed into search bars more frequently, they often create content to match that rising demand. That content leads to more interest, more conversation, and more speculation, creating a cycle that reinforces itself. Even if the currency is not experiencing groundbreaking changes on the technical charts, the Vietnam dong has landed right in the center of this cycle. Influencers on YouTube, TikTok, and financial discussion forums are all talking about it because they see the increased demand for information from their audiences. When people see videos or posts with thousands of views discussing the dong, they assume something significant must be happening and they join the conversation to stay informed. This behavior multiplies across platforms, creating a momentum loop that builds excitement and engagement. Many new investors who were previously unaware of the dong's existence now find themselves curious, actively researching Vietnam's economy and comparing it to other emerging currencies. This widespread curiosity is one of the main reasons traders in dinar communities are paying attention. Because the rise in conversation often signals early market awareness, even before major institutions make formal moves. Another key point influencing the dong's sudden popularity is the rise of community-driven analysis in 2025. Traders no longer rely solely on large financial institutions for their insights. Instead, they share charts, theories, and interpretations among themselves in a decentralized manner. These community insights can become extremely powerful when a large group begins to focus its collective intelligence on a particular currency. The Vietnam dong has become a prime example of how grassroots analysis can bring a currency into the spotlight. Individuals started sharing observations about Vietnam's consistent trade growth, improving financial infrastructure, and rising international attention. Others added their own theories to the mix, linking the currency's stability to potential future policy changes. Even though none of this confirms a major overnight revaluation, the collective energy of thousands of traders creates a palpable sense of importance. This is what drives more people into the conversation. For Iraqi dinar followers, this phenomenon is especially relevant. It shows how market psychology can shift quickly based on shared expectations. Traders understand that when enough people begin to analyze and monitor the same currency, that attention alone can influence the direction of trading activity and liquidity. Even if the fundamental data remains steady, the final major factor in this specific section of our analysis is the role of economic optimism in shaping discussions around the Vietnam dong. Investors in 2025 are eager to identify regions that show long-term economic promise, especially as global financial cycles undergo a reset. Vietnam is one of the Asian nations that has maintained a steady growth path even during times when other economies have struggled. This creates a perception that Vietnam might be entering a new stage of development. Whenever a country appears to be strengthening its economic position, investors naturally wonder how that success could affect its currency. As people research Vietnam's expanding industries, increasing tourism numbers, rising exports, and improving international reputation, they start forming expectations about what could happen in the future. These expectations, even if not supported by dramatic immediate data, become fuel for discussions in Forex communities. The dong becomes more than just a currency, it becomes a symbol of potential. This is why people keep talking about it online, comparing it to other emerging currencies and wondering if it could follow a long-term upward trend. For dinar holders, watching how this attention spreads helps them understand how investor sentiment can shape the energy around a currency before any official financial events occur. Another factor contributing to the Vietnam dong's sudden rise in attention is the way online communities analyze macroeconomic indicators alongside geopolitical stability. Traders today are not just looking at charts. They are paying close attention to government policies, international trade agreements, inflation control measures, and the overall health of a nation's economy. Vietnam has been implementing reforms designed to strengthen its financial system, encourage foreign investment, and create more predictable regulatory frameworks for businesses. When Forex communities notice even modest improvements in these areas, it sparks immediate interest. Stability and predictable growth can signal that a currency may eventually increase in value. These discussions are further amplified by social media groups, forums, and chat rooms where traders share analysis, predictions, and news updates. For many participants, this is not about reacting to sudden price movements, but about understanding the structural factors that could shape the dong's trajectory over time. The combination of a stable economy, supportive government policies, and active global trade creates a perception that the dong is not just another minor currency, but one worth watching. This perception alone drives more traffic and attention, making the dong a trending topic in Forex circles even before major moves are seen on the charts. The next reason for heightened attention is tied directly to the power of social proof in trading communities. When traders see others reacting to certain news, charts, or economic reports, they often feel compelled to investigate the same currency to ensure they aren't missing out. This is exactly what happened with the Vietnam dong. Initial small discussions about its increasing stability and minor upticks in trade volume caught the attention of early community members. As these members shared screenshots, charts, and their own theories, the number of people observing the dong began to multiply exponentially. New participants often interpret this rising activity as a signal that something meaningful could be occurring, even if no formal announcements have been made. In 2025, this type of social-driven awareness is stronger than ever because of the speed and reach of online platforms. Forums and discussion groups can now connect thousands of traders across multiple countries in real time. This environment creates a feedback loop where interest builds on itself, and the dong's visibility continues to increase. For Iraqi dinar watchers, this serves as a clear reminder that currency attention is not always initiated by governments or institutions. Sometimes it originates from the community itself and spreads faster than any formal news cycle. Another crucial reason why the Vietnam dong is receiving extraordinary attention is the role of institutional positioning. While retail traders and online communities drive awareness, hedge funds, banks, and financial institutions quietly monitor emerging currencies to detect potential opportunities. Even small movements in trading volume, liquidity, or investor sentiment can trigger closer scrutiny from these larger players. When institutions notice consistent activity around the dong, they may begin to position themselves strategically, which further validates the perception of growing importance. This dual attention from both online communities and institutional eyes creates a unique environment where a currency suddenly feels alive in the market. Retail traders interpret institutional interest as a strong signal, while institutions sometimes adjust strategies based on broader community behavior. This combination magnifies the effect of even minor trends, and that is why the dong is now at the center of widespread discussion. For Iraqi dinar followers, observing this process is essential. It demonstrates how attention, anticipation, and early positioning can influence not only emerging Asian currencies, but also other underappreciated currencies that have been dormant for years. Finally, it is important to consider how psychological factors drive the surge of interest in the Vietnam dong. Human behavior in markets often follows patterns that go beyond data, charts, and numbers. When traders perceive a currency gaining momentum, it triggers excitement, the fear of missing out, and curiosity, which motivates them to analyze and engage. This is exactly what we are seeing with the dong. Even minor indicators, such as modest increases in trading activity or slight upward movements in Forex charts, are magnified because communities are already primed to search for opportunity. Discussion threads grow, videos get shared, and more traders enter the conversation, creating a sense that something major is unfolding. Even though the actual changes in value may still be small, the collective attention creates energy that can sometimes translate into real market effects. For those watching currencies like the Iraqi dinar, understanding this psychological dynamic is key. It shows that a currency doesn't need to spike dramatically to become relevant. Perception, sentiment, and social reinforcement can create waves that draw widespread attention and influence future behavior. The next reason the Vietnam dong is suddenly dominating conversation in Forex communities is because of global supply chain trends. In 2025, investors are paying unprecedented attention to countries that are improving export efficiency, attracting international investment, and becoming more integrated into regional and global trade networks. Vietnam has been emerging as a hub for manufacturing, especially in electronics, textiles, and consumer goods, making it a focal point for supply chain diversification. Forex communities notice this carefully because stronger trade activity generally translates into increased demand for a country's currency. When traders observe consistent exports and rising foreign partnerships, they interpret this as a signal of stability and potential growth. This perception fuels discussions, online threads, and videos analyzing how such economic improvements could affect the dong's value over time. Even if no dramatic changes are immediately visible on the charts, the narrative of a steadily growing, globally connected economy attracts attention. Investors begin to anticipate future moves, which drives more research, social discussion, and even strategic positioning. For Iraqi dinar watchers, observing how supply chain dynamics influence attention on another emerging currency offers a valuable lesson on the intersection between global trade and Forex interest. Another critical factor contributing to the dong's newfound visibility is the role of comparative analysis. Investors love comparisons, and when a currency like the Vietnamese dong begins trending, it naturally invites comparisons with other emerging market currencies, including the Iraqi dinar. Traders begin evaluating differences in economic growth rates, inflation control, government reforms, and international trade engagement. These side-by-side analyses create more discussions, predictions, and strategies, driving deeper engagement in the community. The dong becomes a benchmark or reference point for investors assessing risk and opportunity in less traditional currency markets. The attention isn't always about immediate gains, it is about potential long-term positioning and understanding which currencies might become more influential over time. As more traders compare emerging currencies, the dong benefits from amplified visibility. Social media amplifies every post, chart, and analysis, feeding a loop of engagement. This comparative lens encourages people to follow Vietnam's financial news more closely, monitor trends in trading volume, and anticipate policy moves. For followers of other currencies, including the Iraqi dinar, it highlights how interconnected Forex discussions are and how the popularity of one currency can influence broader market awareness. Another reason online communities are so focused on the dong is the increasing importance of market sentiment. In 2025, sentiment often drives engagement more than short-term price movement. Investors have learned that understanding how people feel about a currency can be as powerful as knowing its exact value at a given moment. When traders see positive discussions, increasing interest, and repeated mentions of the dong, it creates a perception of upward momentum. Even if the technical indicators show only minor changes, this sentiment can affect behavior, encouraging more analysis, early positioning, and attention to subtle shifts in market activity. For many followers of emerging currencies, this type of psychological influence is key to strategic planning. When one currency gains credibility through positive community sentiment, it often triggers a domino effect, drawing the attention of investors who may have otherwise ignored it. This dynamic amplifies interest in the dong and demonstrates why observing community discussions is critical for anyone monitoring Forex trends. For Iraqi dinar holders, tracking sentiment in other emerging currencies can provide insights into potential global movements and investor psychology that may eventually spill over into their own markets. The rising interest in the dong also relates to the concept of preemptive positioning. Traders often attempt to anticipate future economic changes before they are widely recognized. Vietnam's steady growth, reforms, and rising global engagement have encouraged this type of behavior. Investors are entering discussions, forums, and chat groups, analyzing charts, trading volume, and economic data to position themselves ahead of potential future trends. This preemptive approach doesn't require dramatic current price shifts. It thrives on anticipation and early signals. The dong, by appearing in these conversations, benefits from the focus of traders preparing for potential value changes. Online discussions magnify this effect because traders share observations and hypotheses, creating more engagement and curiosity. The attention given to the dong illustrates how anticipation-driven interest can create real-time discussion waves and early positioning. For Iraqi dinar watchers, understanding preemptive positioning in other currencies is important because it reveals how communities collectively respond to perceived opportunity, even before institutional actions or formal market changes occur. Another major factor contributing to the dong's popularity is the global focus on Asia as a whole. Investors are increasingly considering Asia not just as a manufacturing center, but as a long-term economic powerhouse. Countries like Vietnam, which have historically been underrepresented in major Forex discussions, are now being studied more closely. This macro focus brings attention to emerging currencies, causing communities to dig deeper into market fundamentals, economic policy, and trade statistics. As more traders explore the potential of these currencies, the dong becomes a symbol of opportunity. Its increased visibility encourages cross-border dialogue, research, and analysis, which further fuels the attention loop. For Iraqi dinar observers, this Asian focus highlights the interconnected nature of emerging markets and how interest in one region can inspire comparative evaluation and strategic thinking elsewhere. The dong's popularity is not isolated. It is part of a broader trend where regional economic optimism generates widespread Forex engagement. Another factor shaping the dong's traction is the clarity of information and transparency in reporting. In today's trading environment, participants gravitate toward currencies where market movements are observable and verifiable. Vietnam's transparency in its trading data, economic indicators, and policy updates reassures traders that discussions are grounded in reality, not speculation or rumor. Verified market activity, even small fluctuations, encourages more traders to analyze trends and participate in conversations. This sense of legitimacy is critical in 2025 because online communities are quick to reject unverified or manipulated data. The dong's credibility, combined with emerging market potential, strengthens its position as a topic of discussion. Community members are more willing to monitor charts, analyze data, and engage in strategic planning because the underlying information feels trustworthy. For Iraqi dinar holders, the takeaway is clear: verified, transparent data draws attention, discussion, and strategic engagement in ways that rumors alone cannot replicate. The focus on verification and legitimacy also intersects with risk management. Forex traders are constantly evaluating the safety and potential upside of any investment. Vietnam's steady economic reforms, visible trade activity, and emerging international credibility suggests that the dong presents lower perceived risk compared to less transparent emerging currencies. This perception encourages more people to discuss, analyze, and monitor the currency. By actively participating in verified trends, traders feel they are part of a safer, more credible opportunity, which drives increased engagement in forums, chat groups, and social media discussions. The attention is further amplified because community members share verified charts, trends and interpretations, creating a network effect where more people join the conversation. Another significant reason for the dong's spotlight is the alignment between community attention and institutional monitoring. When retail traders and online forums begin discussing a currency, financial institutions often take note to ensure they understand emerging sentiment and potential early positioning. This dual attention creates a reinforcing loop. Institutions validate the trend, which encourages more community attention, and community attention signals potential opportunity to institutions. The Vietnam dong has benefited from this alignment in 2025, attracting a unique combination of grassroots and professional focus. This effect increases the perceived importance of the currency even if short-term trading activity remains moderate. For Iraqi dinar holders, observing such alignment provides insights into how momentum develops in modern Forex markets, and how attention from both retail and professional players can amplify interest and perceived opportunity. Finally, the combination of macroeconomic potential, community-driven interest, social proof, and institutional awareness explains why the Vietnam dong is receiving such massive attention in Forex communities today. It is not a single factor, but the intersection of multiple dynamics that drives excitement. Traders are drawn to the dong because of Vietnam's economic stability, transparency, and trade growth. Communities amplify minor signals through discussion, sentiment analysis, and shared research. Institutions monitor these patterns, validating the trend and encouraging further interest. The overall effect is a self-reinforcing cycle of attention, research, and positioning, which creates real-world momentum even if price changes are gradual. For Iraqi dinar followers and emerging currency enthusiasts, the dong's popularity demonstrates how modern Forex attention works. In 2025, perception, psychology, transparency, and strategic positioning all converge to create significant buzz. Understanding these patterns provides a roadmap for recognizing which currencies may gain traction next and how community-driven engagement shapes modern Forex trends.